A few days ago, Maxx Crosby, the superstar pass rusher for the Las Vegas Raiders, shared his thoughts on a podcast in response to comments made by Cleveland Browns' Myles Garrett. In his response, Crosby opened up about his own frustrations with the Raiders situation. At first, I didn't think much of it, but the more I've heard people talk about it, the more I realize there's a real possibility Maxx Crosby might not finish his career with the Raiders. In fact, there's a chance that within the next couple of seasons, he could be moved away from the team if the Raiders don't start turning things around. Myles Garrett, speaking to the media last Friday, was asked about his hopes for the future of the Cleveland Browns. He shared how much he wants the team to succeed, win a Super Bowl, and how he hopes to be the one to help lead them there. However, he also mentioned being 10 years into his career with the Browns and feeling frustrated that success hasn't come yet. Despite giving everything he has to the team, the Browns still aren't in a position to contend for a Super Bowl. Crosby, in turn, related to Garrett's feelings, explaining that he's been through similar struggles with the Raiders. For years, it's been one change after another. Coaches being swapped out, defensive lines being reshuffled. Crosby described situations where he would see the team's defensive line looking strong, only to find that many of the key players would be gone the next season. He went on to talk about his own contract situation, revealing that he no longer has any guaranteed money and that a lot of important conversations need to happen in the near future. Still, despite the challenges, he expressed his excitement about the upcoming offseason, hoping for a change and growth in the Raiders' future. He also made sure to acknowledge the Raiders' fans, sharing how much their support has meant to him throughout his journey, even during the tough times, including his injuries. It's clear from Crosby's words that he's facing a lot of uncertainty, and it's becoming more evident that his future with the Raiders could be in question if the team doesn't improve. Maxx Crosby's appreciation for the support he's received from Raiders fans is clear. He described it as being the coolest ever, and it's evident that he deeply values their loyalty. However, Crosby also knows that there are many tough conversations ahead regarding his future with the team. The situation is complicated, and he's looking forward to the offseason, hoping for some positive changes. If you're interested in hearing more about Crosby's thoughts, I highly recommend checking out the full podcast. You can hear the full extent of his passion for winning and his desire to do so with the Raiders, if that's still possible. But as much as Crosby wants to stay and turn things around, we must also face the reality that the Raiders have struggled for most of the last 2 decades. Despite Crosby's determination, there are long-standing issues within the team that may not be easy to fix. Many people have pointed to problems with ownership. Al Davis, the previous owner, left a complex legacy, and now his son, Mark Davis, is under fire for his management. Some believe Mark Davis doesn't have the right approach to running the team, and while it's true that the Raiders have tried to make changes, those fixes often seem temporary. Looking back, the Raiders had a chance at stability when they hired Reggie McKenzie as general manager. McKenzie did a solid job getting the team on track, and under coach Jack Del Rio, the team seemed to be moving in the right direction. But then Mark Davis decided to make another shift, and this time, it was a big one. He hired John Gruden, who demanded full control over team decisions, which ultimately led to the firing of McKenzie. The Raiders then entered the Gruden era, but that also ended in disappointment. After Gruden, the team brought in Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniels, and yet another wave of change, with head coaches and general managers coming and going. The lack of consistency has been a major problem for the Raiders, and this is something Crosby alluded to in his podcast. For the team to move forward, they need to let Tom Telesco, their current general manager, build a solid foundation over the next few years. Stability is key. If they can commit to that, the Raiders might finally have a chance at success. Crosby's commitment is clear too. He wakes up at 5 a.m. every day, working hard and giving everything he has to the team. He's not just talking about putting in the effort, he's living it. Despite the setbacks, Crosby remains dedicated to the Raiders, showing just how much heart and passion he has for the game. Maxx Crosby is clearly frustrated, and at the end of the day, it comes down to one thing. He wants to win. Unfortunately, that hasn't been happening with the Raiders recently. During his podcast, he even acknowledged that people have been speculating about him being traded, and while he didn't dismiss the idea, he also made it clear that he feels he has earned the right to be in control of his future. His comments sparked a lot of talk about whether or not Crosby could be moved, but while it's a real possibility, I don't think it's likely to happen anytime soon. Crosby also touched on the subject of his contract. He revealed that there is no guaranteed money left in his deal, for 2025 and 2026. After looking into it, I found that his original contract actually didn't include much guaranteed money, which is surprising given his status as one of the top pass rushers in the league. While the Raiders aren't likely to part ways with Crosby anytime soon, the reality is that starting in 2025, they could technically move on from him. However, I don't think the Raiders would make that decision, at least not without trying to work something out first. Instead, the Raiders should look to renegotiate Crosby's contract, making him happy and locking him down for the long term. If they don't, they risk losing one of the league's best defensive players. To put things in perspective, Nick Bosa recently signed a deal worth $34 million per year, and Micah Parsons is expected to break or come close to that number. In comparison, Crosby's contract for the next 2 years is only around $26 million, far below what he's worth. To keep Crosby around, the Raiders will likely need to give him a significant raise and a contract extension with a lot of guaranteed money. I think part of the reason Mark Davis is selling parts of the team is to raise the funds needed to keep key players like Crosby. If Davis wants to retain Crosby, he'll need to offer more than just a raise. He'll have to make sure there's enough guaranteed money to keep other rising stars on the team as well, like Nate Hobbs, Tre Tucker, and even future talents like Jackson Kirkland and Brock Bowers. Over the next couple of years, the Raiders will need to invest heavily in players who are helping the team succeed. Crosby's frustration, I believe, stems from the lack of success and the constant changes within the Raiders organization. As a fan, it's hard not to sympathize with Crosby. For years, Raiders fans have been rooting for a team that seems stuck in a cycle of inconsistency, and it's frustrating to see the potential for greatness that goes unrealized. It's incredibly frustrating because the Raiders always seem to get so close to success, only to make decisions that don't make sense. Time and time again, just when it seems like they're on the verge of turning things around, something happens that sets them back. But the truth is, there is a clear path to long-term success for this team, and it's not as complicated as some might think. Other teams have shown that it can be done. For example, since the Raiders drafted Derek Carr, the Chicago Bears have drafted 4 quarterbacks in the first round, finally hitting on a solid QB after years of investment. It's not easy, but with the right strategy, success is possible. The Raiders, however, haven't been following that same strategy. Since 2014, the team hasn't spent a first-round pick on a quarterback, and even when they did draft Carr, it wasn't in the first round. To build a winning team, you need to invest in a top-tier quarterback, especially through those high draft picks. But it's not just about the quarterback. The Raiders also need to secure a great head coach. While coaches like Jack Del Rio and John Gruden had some success, I think the hires of Josh McDaniels and Antonio Pierce have been missteps. It's worth noting that great coaches are hands-on with both sides of the ball. But with Pierce, he relies on his coordinators for both offense and defense. If the Raiders truly want to build a successful team, they need to find that right coach, get the quarterback position figured out, and make sure everything is aligned. It's been painful to watch the team fail to make those key investments, and I feel for Maxx Crosby, who's stuck in a situation where the team isn't doing what it takes to build a solid future. But maybe, just maybe, things will change with Tom Telesco in charge. There's hope that he'll make smart moves with future drafts and that the Raiders can land a solid quarterback in the upcoming draft. Some people are suggesting that if the team doesn't get Cam Ward at pick 1, they should skip another quarterback. But I believe even if the Raiders end up picking at 4 or 5, they should still go for someone like Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, or another potential star. Even if it's not in the first round, the Raiders have to invest in a quarterback with real potential. Aiden O'Connell and Garrett Minshew just aren't the guys to lead the team long-term. Without the right QB, success will continue to be out of reach. On top of that, Crosby's contract situation needs to be addressed. He deserves a raise, and the Raiders must renegotiate his deal with more guaranteed money. If I were in charge, I'd extend Crosby's contract for another 2 years, locking him in through 2028 and ensuring his future with the team. It makes the most sense, and it's crucial for the Raiders to keep their star player happy. The big question now is whether Maxx Crosby's frustration means he might leave. Given that he's a Detroit Lions fan and we're seeing the Lions thrive right now, it's understandable to wonder if Crosby might seek success elsewhere. I've seen many comments on social media where fans are even suggesting the Raiders should trade Crosby, but that seems crazy to me. I'd love to hear what you all think. Do you believe Crosby will stay or leave? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates.